Hello, people of the internet. I am Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir, here with something new for the channel. It is my first ever film noir review, and here with me to celebrate this monument, and here to
Monumental?
yeah, I'll repeat that. And here to celebrate this monumental occasion is none other than kaiju thriller novelist Matt Dennion.
Hi everybody, as always it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of the KaijuNoir channel, and I'm super honored to be the first person to do a noir review with you.
Absolutely, and this was actually your idea to for us to cover this genre of film, since you were like, oh, since you're kaiju noir, you must be a fan of noir films. And I'm like, yes I am. It's like, you know what, you should have more noir content. I was like, would you like to be a part of it? And you were like, hell yeah. And so here we are today, covering not just any noir, but what some consider to be like the king of noirs, the noirs of noirs. This is perhaps like one of the first film noir movies that kind of made the idea of the mystery crime thriller so popular and prevalent throughout the 40s and 50s. And what is that movie, Mr. Dennion?
Today we'll be reviewing the 1941 classic starring Humphrey Bogart and Mary Astor, The Maltese Falcon.
Indeed. Movie that is considered to be one of the best one of the greatest examples of a cinematic classic during that golden age of Hollywood, nominated for 3 Academy Awards back in 1941. It was selected for inclusion in the Library of Congress National Film Registry in 1989, meaning that the government itself thought it was important enough to keep it for safekeeping in case anything were to ever happen. Even Roger Ebert, one of the most popular film critics of all time, cited The Maltese Falcon as like one of his own collection of great movies. Even, what was it called? Publication, that kind of French publication that coined the term film noir, considered The Maltese Falcon to be kind of like the first major film noir, or like kind of like, what would be the term, progenitor?
Progenitor? Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of the very first ones that kind of got the ball rolling. And so, being that you are an individual who has actually written film noir-based stories before you started writing about giant monsters beating up other giant monsters and robots,
Yeah.
What is your definition of a film noir? Because I noticed that it's a word that often gets thrown around a lot, or like, oh, it has a very noirish feel, or it has elements of film noir. And sometimes it's treated as a style, other times it's treated like a genre. So for you, what is your definition of the term noir or film noir?
For me, when I think of it, I would say it typically a detective story, although it doesn't necessarily have to be a detective story. There are many examples of what would be a noir story that doesn't have a detective. But, set in like the 1940s, 1950s, quite often with, it's not a story that you can just sit down and immediately understand what's going on and where it's going. It should be a story where it's well written, but with lots of subtle turns that keep you guessing as to what the character's motivations are in the story and exactly where it's going to end up, which The Maltese Falcon obviously just nails in terms of its feel towards it. What also I think makes a noir is the inclusion of a flawed anti-hero, so much or more so than your typical hero that you would get in a story. Most of these noir stories do have kind of that like hard edge private eye or detective or what have you that really walks the line between being a hero and doing things that would be seen as perhaps unscrupulous in order to reach whatever ends he feels or she feels is justified. So in this case, in a noir film, quite often the ends justify the means type of character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I would say for me, a noir film is something that's heavily entrenched in crime drama.
Yes.
Usually they're involved some sort of illegal activity, and you're right. The protagonist is someone who is very flawed, has maybe perhaps some inner demons. You're right. He walks the line between good and between that moral line between good and evil, and the whole ends and justify the means. But he kind of teeters a little bit, even though he may have a very seedy past. He or she, in some cases, but as history has shown, it's mostly typically male protagonists. They walk the line, but they still they want to strive more towards the good side, and that's what makes them the most relatable to the audience as they delve deeper and deeper into this web of lies, deceit, betrayal, and murder and all sorts of crime. It's a very like the name implies, noir is the French term for black, and
Yes.
the French coined the term film noir due to how dark and at some points depressing these movies can be, because there are so many twists at so many different turns. You're right about motivations always being hidden. Nothing is ever as it seems, and the main character simply wants to get to the bottom of it and wants to uncover the truth within this web of lies.
Yes.
And so that brings us to the premise for the Maltese Falcon, which a lot of the story in the Maltese Falcon is something you would see in many more noir stories that would follow. And in fact, it's almost kind of like in a way, it is the typical noir story where you have a private investigator named Sam Spade, played by the legendary Humphrey Bogart. He has his partner, Miles Archer, played by Jerome Cohen. They meet this beautiful woman who it comes to them with this job of following this one individual who she claims to have in a way sort of kidnapped her sister, so she wants like the dirt on him so she can bring him to justice. So when Sam's partner goes off to investigate this person, both the person and his partner gets killed. So that gets Sam's attention, and he says, wait a minute, this seems very fishy. And eventually he comes to learn that that person and the woman whose name was O'Shaughnessy?
Yes. Bridget O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
Although she introduced herself as Ruth Wonderly to start the film.
Right.
And then, which again goes to what we talked about with this kind of everybody's hiding something. So.
Mm-hmm. So O'Shaughnessy, she reveals herself and saying, okay, I made up the story. And eventually Humphrey Bogart's character, Sam, learns that that O'Shaughnessy, along with two other characters, Joel Cairo and Casper Gutman, are all after this priceless ancient artifact called the Maltese Falcon, which is the MacGuffin of this plot. For those who don't know what a MacGuffin is, the MacGuffin is a plot device that are a single a person, place, or thing that the entire plot revolves around. So so Sam learns that these important players are all trying to topple one another in order to get to this priceless artifact first. And meanwhile, Sam is trying to deal with these characters while also trying to fight off the police who think that he is responsible for his partner's death.
Yes, yeah, and throughout the story, as we said, the motivations of everybody are kind of shaded, and so you're not exactly sure, other than Sam, who you should be kind of pulling for Sam to help out as the story goes along.
Right. And, people are changing sides. Sam is trying to be friendly with all sides rather than staying simply with one side. And he's also trying to find a way to outsmart everyone who is on his tail. And that's one of the things I really enjoy. You know what? Did you ever get a bit of like a Bugs Bunny vibe from Sam? Because he always seems like the kind of character who everyone wants to get him, but he's always trying to outsmart them, trying to outwit them at every turn. Yeah,
I think you hit that spot on with that whole kind of Bugs Bunny vibe. Where Sam is outwitting people at every turn, and he's making you seem as if he's forming alliances with people, where he's not necessarily doing that, but just trying to get to the bottom of the case here. In fact, I think that's often why, if you watch any of those old Bugs Bunny cartoons, where they have like cameos by celebrities sort of in the background, you'll often see Bugs Bunny associated with Humphrey Bogart as like the coolest kind of
Suave
person.
kind of person.
Suave. Yes, yeah, and the person who's the smartest person in the room. So
Right, a very cocky attitude.
Yes.
You know, he's never stays quiet. He's always like intentionally pissing off other people so he can get them to break first before they can break him.
Yes, yes, and keeps them off guard that way too.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't need to talk to you. Or
Yeah.
like the policemen are here and he would just make jokes at them straight to their face. He's like, what is your boyfriend implying here, man?
Yeah, it's actually one of the things I really like about this film. I'm glad that you brought that up. Is there's a lot of very subtle humor from the Sam Spade character in the movie that really adds onto it, and it's not like laugh track funny, and it's not like you might not even pick it up at first. It might take you a second or two to sink in.
Right.
But it's Bogart's delivery in this with those types of things is just fantastic, and
incredibly sharp. And of course,
yes.
Bogart being who he is, being the legendary actor that I previously mentioned that he is, is very he's like 100% committed to the role. He is what would be the perfect word for this? He's always spot on with his delivery.
Yes, yeah. Timing impeccable, that would be how I would describe it.
Right. And I misquoted the line. It was, where's your boyfriend getting at, Tom? And also, was it possible that Bugs Bunny's voice, Mel Blanc's voice for Bugs Bunny may have been based on Humphrey Bogart?
Now that you mention it, I think that could be the case. Yeah. I have to do a little bit more research in that, but I could definitely
I can totally imagine, like, the voice of, like, yeah, what's up, Doc?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, in fact, even the kind of like, if you were to draw Humphrey Bogart as a cartoon rabbit, I could see Bugs Bunny fitting that mold a bit.
Which is also very funny because I think it was in the 80s or 90s, Warner Brothers did a parody of Casablanca with Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes.
Oh, really? I haven't seen it. I have to check that out.
Yeah, I think it was like some silly pun like Carrot Blanca or something. And, of course, Bugs Bunny's in the Humphrey Bogart role, and he does, for a short time, Bugs Bunny does a Humphrey Bogart impersonation all he had to do was just like deepen his voice a little.
Yeah. You got to find that, put a link in the description now for everybody that you brought that up.
Oh yeah, it's called Carrot Blanca. You can find it on YouTube. It's only 8 minutes long, and it was made in 1995.
Wow, was that late that they made it? That's interesting.
Yeah.
It also goes to show the longevity of this film, that more than 50 years after it came out, they still thought, well, we will make a parody of this and people will still get it.
Right. And like I mentioned earlier before, a lot of the common tropes of the film noir genre all kind of started with this movie, especially with the basic premise of you got the hard-boiled detective, the beautiful femme fatale who's keeping a lot of secrets. She asks to him if he can take the job. He learns the job is much more complicated than he initially thought it would be, and then he learns about more characters, gets deeper and deeper into the plot until he eventually tries to win or pull a fast one over the villains, while at the same time having to sacrifice something deep and personal to him. And that's the thing with film noir stories. They mostly tend to have like very strong, bittersweet endings.
Yes, yeah. This is not a genre where we're going to get a happy hero rides off into the sunset with the girl ending often at all. But it's one thing that I really love about the genre is that you don't necessarily feel safe when you're watching it. You're not watching a fairy tale where things are going to work out well at the end. And the Maltese Falcon, like you had said, is really the film that kind of set the standard for how these type of films would follow from there on out. The template and then the highest standard for it.
Yeah, so. I mean, it kind of reminds me of this one comic that I read. Are you familiar with Marvel's Noir universe?
Yeah, love like the Spider-Man Noir universe. A huge fan of that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Marvel Comics, they love to create alternate universes where they can place their characters in different situations. Same with DC Comics. With Marvel, they created the Noir universe that places a bunch of their most popular, some of their popular characters into a 1930s, 1940s setting with noirish stories, crime dramas, twists at every turn, motivations and people changing motivations and sides. And the most popular one, I believe, were X-Men Noir and Spider-Man Noir. And the Noir version of Spider-Man would go on to appear in a video game, an animated television series, and even a crossover comic that featured
Right.
Spider-Man from different universes all meeting up. And this one, even like the Wolverine Noir, actually had this exact premise of the detective who goes off and is seduced by the femme fatale and gets involved in a deeper plot. And I want to say potentially Daredevil Noir also featured a similar premise of someone meeting a beautiful woman and getting wrapped up in this big drama.
Yeah, yeah. If your fans are sci-fi fans in general and are looking for sort of like a gateway into noir genre, I would highly recommend X-Men Noir and Spider-Man Noir as sort of like a bridge between the sci-fi and the noir genre of storytelling. That would be a good inlet for them.
I'm not sure if X-Men Noir can be counted as sci-fi because the characters don't have powers, but rather they are sociopaths. In that version, Charles Xavier believes that sociopaths are like the next stage in human civilization and human interaction. People like doing crazy things and making you believe that they are someone else who is completely different than who they actually are. I would say probably Spider-Man would be the easiest one to get into because Spider-Man, Peter Parker, that version of Peter Parker is still very much so Spider-Man, and it does contain elements of actually fantasy more than science fiction, but it still stays true to the to Spider-Man and his rogues gallery.
Right, and like the rogues kind of are more like circus freaks, which you would have seen in the 1930s, but they still fit the same. They're still the same characters that you're used to, like the Green Goblin or the Vulture, just with slightly different twists on them. But the storytelling there is it was very good too, and in like the Maltese Falcon, this version of Spider-Man's a little bit darker than a typical Peter that we're used to.
Oh, right. He's not a very well-off individual. He's very much so has lived a very troubled life, and so he's got a lot more bitter than your usual Peter Parker. But I guess going back to the Maltese Falcon, let's see, where to even start with this movie? I know we talked a bit about Sam Spade. He's wild, unpredictable. He's very private with his when it comes to his information and his emotions. He never likes to show his hand until after everything's been said and done. Let's see.
I'm thinking the Bridget O'Shaughnessy character is fantastic in this movie as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like you said, she's the femme fatale, and she's constantly making herself appear like a damsel in distress.
Right,
when she's truly anything but a damsel in distress.
Yeah, that's what I like about her. Like, even nowadays, people tend to go for the femme fatale. For those who don't know the femme fatale, that is basically this beautiful woman who uses her sexuality to entice men and getting them to do what she wants. For those...
Like a Catwoman, for instance.
Exactly. Catwoman is kind of like the modern day equivalent of the femme fatale. And also, if any of you have read Sin City or watched the second Sin City movie, A Dame to Kill For, Ava Green, was it Ava Green? I think that's her name.
Eva Green, right?
Eva Green, yeah.
Yeah.
She is the, personification of the femme fatale that you would see in any noir story. And, but the thing is, even though we call her Bridget O'Shaughnessy the femme fatale, she isn't really so much a traditional femme fatale, which I think makes this movie stand out today among all other people that have since tried to copy this story. And that you're right, she isn't trying to control men with her beauty and her demeanor, but it's not so much a seductress type of demeanor. Rather, it's, like you said, she's making herself appear weak in order to get people to come by her side. And she did so with what's his name, Thursby. Thursby was the man that she wanted Sam and his partner to go after, and Thursby was her previous partner, and she mentioned, oh, by the way, spoilers ahead, spoilers for this
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
Like with all other reviews, we try to save spoilers for later, but because this movie is so entrenched, is so reliant on mysteries that don't get solved until the very end, I feel like we have to spoil this in order to talk about each character to completion, because we can't really talk about what they appear to be. Rather, I feel like in order to talk about our full thoughts on a character, we have to talk about like everything, like, you know, what they really are and what our impressions are on those revelations. But yeah.
I would. Sorry, I would say the Thursby character would be what we would call today kind of like a mark for the Bridget O'Shaughnessy character, where she had used her wiles on him to convince him to help her track down the Maltese Falcon. And like you said, spoiler, she puts him in a position... Sorry?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did she grow tired of him, or was he trying to do... No, I think she claimed that... She later changed her story to claim that Thursby was going to betray her, so she wanted to get him first. But in reality, I think the thing is she just wanted to have the Maltese Falcon for herself.
Yes. So she had set him up in a position to be offed. And then it also, by having him murdered, made her look like she was in distress, so that Sam's character might feel a little bit more of the need to protect her. Because of the way that she portrayed herself, and that, look, my partner's already been killed, these other men will kill me, to stop at nothing to obtain the Maltese Falcon.
Right, and she's very quick-witted. She's pretty much almost like Sam in every way, in that she's also very private. She keeps her true intentions to herself, and she is someone who is not your typical woman of this era. She appears much stronger than she appears to be, or she is much stronger than she appears to be, and that's what attracts Sam's. That's what makes Sam attracted to this character, because she's so different from any other woman he has been with up to that point, or he's ever met up until that point. And I think her original plan was she wanted to kill Sam's partner in order to pin the blame on Thursby, unaware that Thursby was already killed by someone else entirely. And I'm not sure who it was, but I think it was the like the main henchman of Gus, what was his name? Gutman.
Gutman.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So she didn't count on Thursby also being killed, I think.
Slight spoiler. Let me just double check my notes here.
Yeah.
Does she kill? Right. She got the other guy.
Let's see.
Wilmer to kill Wilmer, who is Gutman's sort of like strongman, his henchman, to kill her former partner, Thursby. And then she, in turn, and so what happened is that Sam's partner Archer is killed and Thursby's killed on the same night, like you said. So it looks like Sam might have been the one to kill Thursby in retaliation for Archer's death.
Yeah, so she was trying to get a bunch of players to off themselves so that she could, like, with all her enemies gone. And this is before Joel Cairo and Gutman enter the picture, so she thought she already escaped those two guys, so she thought she can get these Thursby she can get Thursby off and can have Sam and his partner to end up to meet their own end, so that she can like cut ties, like what do you call it, like burn her trail, or bury her trail and cut all ties.
Right, and like you said, this is a spoiler-filled thing, so people can see kind of going ahead. It's O'Shaughnessy who killed Archer when he was supposed to be shadowing her to protect her, and that then set up for when Thursby was killed to make him look like it was Sam Spade's character. But it's those actions that you don't know until you get further in the story that really make you realize how devious and ruthless Bridget O'Shaughnessy's character is, and then you can really appreciate the story more. And one thing that comes across really well, I think, in the movie is the interplay between her and Sam, where you can tell that they both know they're each trying to play each other to a certain extent. but they don't know what the other's end game is. So it becomes like a very interesting, almost like chess games of what they say and their actions to draw out what the other person's actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of almost like a mental game of cat and mouse as Sam is trying to put the pressure on O'Shaughnessy and try to get the real truth out of her. Meanwhile, she's trying so desperately to hold on and to keep up appearances.
Yes. And in between, as you've mentioned, there's two other players mixed into this in Peter Lorre's character, Joel Cairo, as well as Sidney Greenstreet's Casper Gutman, who are two people that have been pursuing the Maltese Falcon for almost 20 years at this point, separately, but they have come across each other before. They're not like working in tandem.
Okay, I think it kind of implied that that Joel Cairo, Thursby, and O'Shaughnessy were all kind of like employees who worked under Gutman. And that each of them ended up betraying him, and that Joel Cairo, being the sniveling coward that he is, eventually crawls back to Gutman.
I took it as that they were working separately and kind of crossed paths, and Gutman was the most feared and powerful of the crew. So like you said, with Joel Cairo being kind of like a sniveling wuss, he would go back there. But Cairo did try to, like you said, at least betray, if they were working together, Gutman, and do an end around when he thought Sam Spade was in possession of the Maltese Falcon and to acquire it for himself. So, and one thing we talked about the humor in this, there's a lot of physical humor directed at the Joel Cairo character.
Yeah, because he's such a small. He has a because of his short stature and his very meek demeanor. Sam basically towers over him, and you can even tell like this man was made to be like kind of like the butt of the majority of jokes here. Sam, he's constantly slapping his tiny little gun out of his hand.
In fact, one of the best lines is I think the Bridget O'Shaughnessy slaps Joel Cairo, and then Sam slaps him twice, and he says, Joel Cairo says, "Listen, I'm getting tired of being slapped," and Sam slaps him again and says, "You're going to learn to like it."
When I slap you, you'll take it and like it.
Yeah. Which was delivered with that perfect Bogart manner, so it's really, it's one of those small pieces of humor we talked about that's not overt, but very funny if you go back and watch the film.
Speaking of subtlety, I get the feeling that maybe they were implying that he was perhaps gay, because there's the line where Joel, Sam, and O'Shaughnessy were all they're all talking to each other. They're all in the same hotel room, and they notice that they're being trailed by Gutman's like top man, and I think it was O'Shaughnessy who tells Joel, "You might be able to get around him, Joel, like the one in Istanbul." What was his name? And I'm thinking, like, what was he saying? Like, he could try to put the moves on him, and
they made it very subtle.
And Joel responds, "You mean the one you couldn't get to?" And he was interrupted. He was like slapped or punched before he can finish the line. "You mean the one you couldn't get to potentially do something sexual with him?" So you're saying like, oh, maybe you can put the moves on him. It's like, oh, you mean the one who you couldn't do as in that instance?
Yeah, I believe you're right, because in the book, we should have mentioned that the Maltese Falcon was originally a novel, by the way.
Yeah.
The Joel Cairo is an overtly gay character.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm just not sure if in 1941 that would have gone over as well in a movie.
I think in the 1940s, the censors, like, what was it called? The Hays Code. The Hays Code pressed a lot of censorship on movies back in the Golden Age, and the Hays Code wouldn't be dropped until perhaps like the new Hollywood in like the late 50s, early 60s. So back then you couldn't really get away with having blatantly gay characters, or even sexual characters for that matter. Even someone like what's her name? What was her name? Maya West?
Mae West?
Mae West, yes, yeah, Mae West. Yeah. Mae West, that's her name. She was, even though nowadays her demeanor would be considered very tame, like maybe PG-13 at the very most. But
Right.
back then, people were like, no, we can't her swinging her hips around or making sexual innuendos. But in certain cases, you can, if you were super subtle, if you were clever with your dialogue, the censors would probably be too stupid to pick up on it. This was something I noticed with the original Scarface, where it
Yes.
was implied that the main individual, Tony, had a thing for his own sister, had like an obsession, a sexual obsession with his own sister, and obviously, that movie was released today. The reason why that movie was censored was because they wanted the protagonist to be punished by the court system instead of being gunned down by policemen outside his own apartment.
Right. Right. And speaking on those same lines, it's one thing about the Soma was they touch upon it, but they didn't really clarify what had occurred. As they suggest heavily that Archer, Sam Spade's original partner, that his wife might have been having an affair with Spade too.
Okay, that they did blatantly told us.
Yeah, but they didn't confirm that they were, right? They just kind of
Oh no, they
suggested
kissed.
maybe?
They kissed, I believe. Yeah,
Okay.
they hugged and kissed when.
Yes, they did do that.
Yeah, when as soon as she's introduced, she embraces Sam and then later kisses him to know, okay, because that plays into the whole noir trope of the main character not being all that altruistic. And,
Yes.
which is perfect. This is a person who is not perfect. He is an individual who has his fair share of morally ambiguous actions.
Yeah, and the murder of his of Joe, the Archer character, fits in well to that, and that it did works in well in the story too. In that, as soon as Sam finds out that Archer's killed, he immediately has the name of his detective agency changed from Spade and Archer to just Sam Spade Investigations or something along those lines, and he seems
Right.
very indifferent to the death of his partner.
Mhm.
And basically, we even at the end of the story, he finally does show some emotion
Oh
about
yeah,
it.
which he was hiding the whole time.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
Because it looked like from the very beginning he always suspected O'Shaughnessy of offing Archer, but he didn't. He kept his suspicions very minimum. He only made it seem like she had some reason, she had some involvement, but never outright being the one to do the dirty deed. And it wasn't until the very end does he make this big speech. I actually have the line right here. When a man's partner is killed, he's supposed to do something about it. It doesn't make any difference what you thought of him. He was your partner and you were supposed to do something about it. When it happens, we're in the detective business. Well, then one of your organization gets killed, it's bad for business to let the killer get away. It's bad all around. It's bad for every detective everywhere. So he kind of follows a certain code of honor when it comes to the detective business.
Yeah, and he's more concerned. It seems you did a great job with the Bogart voice, by the way. But
It's not as good as my Orson Welles voice, but it's the best I can do.
Yeah.
Of all the impersonations in all the world, why did it have to be this one?
But he's more concerned with kind of upholding that sort of unwritten code about it's bad for business than he is necessarily distraught by the loss of his friend, who apparently is running around with the guy's wife anyway. And then the police do kind of bring up that maybe that's at some point that Sam may even have killed Archer himself because of that. So
yeah, I really like that. It gave him a strong motivation. And it even brings it up. It's like, well, he was a good person all around. He just was a person who slept with other women, or he was a person who was after other women, and his own wife didn't like him that much either. So in a way, both Archer and Sam, they were great detectives, but they were just not very good people overall.
No. Which is, like you said, is kind of one of the tropes of the noir genre.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I think that this whole little love triangle between him, his partner, and his partner's wife gave more depth to these characters than you would see in a lot of movies during this era.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
absolutely. Back then, it was like during the Hays Code, you really didn't want to have, or the Hays Code was really pressuring people to have very have role models as your protagonists, to have like the bad guys be put in jail, the good guys being these moral to have these upstanding morals, to enforce how Americans should act like in real life. So I was really surprised that they were able to do this, get away with this as well back in the day. I mean, just look at westerns alone. Back in the day, you would have like the upstanding sheriff who would take out the outlaw in his own town, like a full moon.
Right, and it's one of the reasons they were able to do it, and I think it's one of the reasons that you and I love this movie and the series, is the subtlety of the entire thing. Like, you really have to be paying attention, and that Sam kind of walks that line between good and bad. He's not overtly crossing it, especially to the bad side, but he does certainly kind of probe on that side to see how he can use it to fit his ends.
Right. And he would actually, end up challenging the law enforcement, which was very surprising back in that day.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, going out of their way to completely insult them to their faces. And he also mentioned that I did like the scene where he was being questioned by the court, and he's like, listen, Judge, I know you don't like me, but I got this crime here, and I'm going to find a way to solve it, and the only way I can solve it is if you were to get the hell out of my way.
Yeah. And one of the other things he does, the Sam Spade character does so great, is we talked about the Wilmer character, sort of like the hired gun for Gutman.
He's always giving him so much shit.
Yeah, he's giving him and pushing his buttons and just shitting on him repeatedly. It's
Get that
great.
gun out of my face before I make you use it.
At one point he manages to get behind him and just uses his own coat to tie him up, and then he embarrasses him. Very Bugs Bunny-ish, embarrasses him on top of, assaulting him, just to kind of add that insult to injury.
Right, or like remember when he loses him at that one, it was like a hotel or an apartment, where he presses like all the buttons so that when he enters the building, the henchman doesn't know which room he went into. Meanwhile, Sam just sneaks out the back door and just sees him, the henchman, just like still at the front door, wondering what door he went into.
Yeah. And again, it's very subtle. You got to be watching it, it makes it great, and why this movie is so fantastic. So.
Right. And let's see. I think we talked enough about Joel Cairo, sniveling, acts lower, short stature. He's pathetic. He's very prissy. He doesn't like being injured. And again, one of the best things about him is that, he definitely likes to choose the winning side. And so he's great. He's more than willing to, slide back into the safe, comforting arms of Casper Gutman, despite referring to him as the Fat Man, meaning that he had like not a lot of respect for him. Or I'm not sure if Gutman was if the Fat Man was a nickname that he himself used, or if it was just a derogatory insult made by the other characters.
I think it was a little bit of both, and that it started as an insult, and then Gutman. I mean, his name is Gutman. For one,
because he's fat.
Yeah, but despite like the goofy name, the character is tremendous. In fact, I think you can kind of see in this character what would lead to the trope that would lead to like characters like the Kingpin later on.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah, like Sydney Greenstreet does pretty much look like the kind of person that would encompass what the Marvel Comics the Kingpin would be. Fat, white, bald, strong, rich man who has a lot of people under his control and has a lot of power. And despite the fact that he doesn't seem to physically do much, he has enough power to get you killed, and any threat he makes, he will make sure to see it through to the end, especially when he was willing to turn on his own henchman, which he claimed was like a son to him.
Yes, but...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he was the Wilmer character who he claimed is like a son to him. He, at first, and to put it in perspective, the Casper Gutman character is... sort of like an antithesis to Sam, or like the opposite side of a coin for Sam, where he's also very intelligent, and he's able to play people, and he always comes off as cool. Like the Gutman character never seems flustered like Peter Lorre's character gets, or
Right.
angry like
Like,
the Wilbur character gets.
right, and anytime Sam, he does get Sam to get very angry, or I mean, there are certain cases where Sam gets the one up on him later on where he pretends to be angry, but
Right.
in the times where he does get to Sam, outright threatens him. Wilma is he's getting ready to, pull the gun on him for disrespecting Gutman, but he just simply laughs off any sort of insult that Sam throws at him because he knows that he's trying to get him riled up.
Yes,
And
yes.
he has that classic line that's like, "You are certainly quite a character."
Yeah, and he actually recognizes the skills that Sam has,
Mhm.
and tries to. At one point, they kind of put their cat and mouse game aside. And he says, "Hey, I'd like to have you in my employ. You certainly have skills that would be useful to me going forward,"
Yes.
which is cool. But I thought Cindy Gutman, or Cindy Greenstreet,
Casper
as
Gutman.
Casper Gutman, was a
Sidney
great
Greenstreet,
character.
yes.
Yeah, was a great character in this film too.
Yeah.
As much as Bogart and Astor play their roles perfectly, Sidney Greenstreet was fantastic in this. And where you find yourself, I don't want to say rooting for the villain, but he's not the type of villain you hate. You're very much intrigued by him going forward.
Right, because he was the person that kind of brought the attention of the Maltese Falcon to the majority of the cast, I want to say. And he had this huge obsession to get this secret treasure that's been lost for so many years, since the 1500s, I want to say. So it's like this
Yes.
nearly 500-year-old statue that's filled with treasure inside, and even though he seems to have all the money he wants, that having that Maltese Falcon alone is like a symbol of power. It's like he gets this huge sense of accomplishment from it, to the point where it's he places the Maltese Falcon over the lives of the people around him. And I have this classic line here, where he's going to turn on his own henchman, where he says, "I couldn't be fonder of you if you were my own son, but well, if you lose a son, it's possible to get another. There's only one Maltese Falcon."
Yes, that is a great line, and it totally encompasses the Gutman character and his motivations. And yeah, I found that intriguing. He seems to be, and this is why I keep thinking like a Kingpin character, he seems to already be quite rich and have everything he could want. Is he just the kind of, he likes the thrill of the hunt character, and getting this would be, like you said, a status symbol for him?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. It definitely seems to be a status symbol. And it was certainly be something to say, like, I was able to do the impossible. That makes me better than anyone else. I was able to, find the Maltese Falcon when everyone thought that it was a lost treasure or merely a myth.
Right.
Yeah, and then so when it turns out that the Maltese Falcon he was after turned out to be a fake, he was ready to carry onwards with his search.
Yeah, and it's a great scene actually where he doesn't, after 17 years, and he thinks he finally has this MacGuffin he's been looking for, and it turns out to be fake. He doesn't become frustrated and go insane and flip a table or something.
Like Joel does.
Right. Yeah. Joel's the much more volatile character that's easily swayed. The Gutman character simply says, "Okay, it's back on the chase then. Let's go," and looks to go about his business. But of course, Sam had outsmarted everybody by that point. So
yeah. Yep. Let's see. I wonder if this was it. Oh yeah, I think this is the line that Joel Cairo used. He's like, You bungled it! You and your stupid attempt to buy it! Kemedov found out how valuable it was. No wonder he had such an easy time stealing it. You imbecile! You bloated idiot! You stupid fathead, you! Yeah, it was really funny just watching well, I'm blanking on the character's name.
Peter Lorre?
Yeah, Peter Lorre just going crazy. I do want to mention Peter Lorre because Peter Lorre nowadays, you may not know, even now, people nowadays may not know who Peter Lorre is, but you certainly know the Peter Lorre voice, because whenever people try to bring up the Peter Lorre voice, they always try to apply it to like some Igor Frankenstein type of character.
Yeah, you know what that is?
Which I don't think he has ever played.
No, you know what it is?
Yes, master. that creepy laugh that only he could do, or that's certainly like came from him.
He was portrayed, and it's funny we keep going back to Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm.
He was portrayed as the mad scientist who made the Gossamer monster in the old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah. And Gossamer, for those who don't know, he's like the red hairy monster with sneakers.
Yes, and the guy that you see, the scientist that you see that makes him with the sunken eyes and the big round face, head, and the hair that's patted down, is based on Peter Lorre. So I think that's where a lot of people get that connection with like the mad scientist Igor type thing is from those Looney Tunes cartoons with that.
That is so hilarious, man. Also, if for anyone who is a fan of the Count Chocula Frankenberry Booberry cereal, Count Chocula was doing Bela Lugosi.
Right.
I think Frankenberry was doing crap, what was his name?
Karloff?
Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And the ghost was doing Peter Lorre.
Yes.
Yes, you have Blueberry cereal in stores everywhere. Only Halloween time.
It's out now. I just saw it actually.
Oh wow! Sadly, this will be the second Halloween where I will have no monster cereals.
Boo hoo.
Yeah, boo hoo. Yeah. So that is hilarious that Peter Lorre gets usually you hear the Peter Lorre voice in a type of character that he never played at all in any movie whatsoever.
No, I think in fact he's usually most of his characters are more like this Joe Cairo character where he's more of a conniving,
snivelly, weaselly, backstabber.
Right, as opposed to the mad scientist we know him from, which you can chalk up to Looney Tunes. But
I thought that this was the movie, but he had this popular, iconic line, "You despise me, don't you?" I thought that was from this movie, but I guess it turned out to be from another one?
Yeah, I don't believe he said that in this one. I couldn't tell you which one it was from off the top of my head, but he didn't say that in this one.
Right. And let's see. Oh, okay, I think it was. I forgot that Peter Lorre was in Casablanca, so I think that came from there because
okay.
I know Sidney Greenstreet was in Casablanca as well. So it's like, I wonder if they got it was like the majority of the cast from this movie that was later featured in Casablanca. Although I'm not sure what year Casablanca was. I'll check it right now.
Yes, I believe it was after. I think what happened back then was a lot of times the actors would sign with a specific studio. Mm-hmm. So you would see the same actors in the same films quite often.
So like the studio would own you for life, basically.
Right.
And yeah, it was, so the Maltese Falcon was 1941, Casablanca was 1942.
Okay, so the next year, almost like a follow-up, kind of.
Right. So it wasn't all that strange to see actors typically playing almost like the same character archetype over and over again.
Right, like Bogart plays that very cool, suave guy in every film, like Casablanca and the Maltese Falcon. So
I would say, like, what's really funny is that I remember, what was it called? The African Queen. That was the movie where he played against type, where he was kind of playing a schlubby boat owner in Africa who turns out to be part of this crazy plot to help out in World War I against the Russians, despite him wanting nothing to do with that. And the African Queen... it's like I think for many years, the Oscars were trying to snub him, and it wasn't until after when he played against type in The African Queen did he actually win his very first Oscar.
Okay, yeah, here it is. His only Academy Award in 3 nominations. He was nominated other times. I believe he was nominated for the Maltese Falcon, and probably Casablanca would be the other guess. Or maybe Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Okay, I've heard that title, but I haven't seen that one yet.
Treasure of Sierra Madre is pretty cool, man. I think you would like that too. It's one of the films that would inspire Indiana Jones down the road.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it does sound very Indiana Jones-esque, that title.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It also reminded me of another of this adventure movie, The Beast from Hollow Mountain. Although that movie is far less entertaining than what the title makes it appear to be.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
that's for
you
sure.
take the Valley of Guanji and like take out like 90% of the entertainment value from it.
Yes, and you have Beast from Hollow Mountain.
Yeah. In fact, the
So,
Valley of Guanji sounds more adventurous, I would say.
yeah.
Let's see. So we have talked about Gutman, O'Shaughnessy, Cairo, Sam, Archer. Let's see. Anything else?
Oh, we talked about Wilmer, right? Being
We
kind of
talked
just
about
like the
Wilmer,
hired gun.
yeah, the hired gun, and despite having like the very deep, intimidating voice, Sam always, breaks and takes him down a notch, pegs him down a notch, like at every turn. He tried every threat he makes. Sam, always like shrugs it off. Oh, I do want to bring up the part where Gutman tricks Sam into drinking some alcohol that turns out to be drugged. And that is another classic trope of the film noir genre where the
Yes.
main character meets the main villain and they have a small talk. They exchange their outlook on the world. They exchange their goals like, I'm going to get you. I can't do it now, but I'm going to do it. Oh, really now? And then it turns out that the main character was drugged and gets the shit kicked out of him and eventually gets thrown out of the main villain's lair or headquarters.
And it's often as a result of the vices that you see the main characters have in noir film, which is typically alcohol and women. Like from the
Yes,
19
their strongest weaknesses.
Yeah.
And again, it's another nice way of humanizing Sam so that he's not this completely invincible guy who always outsmarts his enemies.
Right, right.
Yeah, for once,
it definitely.
right, and it kind of makes Gutman out to be a very intelligent character by being able to outsmart Sam in this one instance where no one else was able to do so before.
Hmm. Yeah. And
So,
I think the only thing left for us to kind of discuss, which we've touched on a bit, is what this film means to the genre in general. Like I think you had said already, this really kind of is the gold standard, I think, for the noir genre, right? I can't think of any other film that I would think is the standard bearer. In fact, like I just downloaded on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it had 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
I just saw it on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, 100%. Meaning that in this cynical world that we live in, not a single person has a problem with the Maltese Falcon.
Right. The only other film I think that I've seen that has that is the original King Kong, which might be a good comparison for our kaiju fans here. And that like we're
The Maltese Falcon is the King Kong of noir films.
yeah. It really kind of is. Like where, King Kong is kind of like the movie where it was like, hey, we can make giant monsters and it'll go from here. And that's going to be like the standard bearer in the past. I feel like the Maltese Falcon, right?
Yeah.
To some extent, it has that same level of standing, wouldn't you think? Or
Oh yeah, definitely. It was served as a great inspiration. It's helped kickstart a genre, even if it probably wasn't the first film noir movie. It was definitely the biggest. It made the biggest impact that made it popular, I want to say.
yes, it definitely wasn't even the first. This 1941 wasn't even the first film version of the Maltese Falcon.
Right. It's kind of like, to go to, I guess, my area of expertise, giant robots, where there have been giant robots in other forms of media, be it like Superman comics or the Astro Boy comics, but it wasn't until like Tetsujin 28, or in America we know him as Gigantor, did the idea of a story revolved around giant robots really, got popular, and other people since went on to build on top of that concept. And I can say the same can be said for the Maltese Falcon, where it caused such a splash that everyone in Hollywood wanted to make movies like that for that short amount of time. And even then, so it would be the inspiration for many movies to come, and then those movies would serve as inspirations for other movies, and it would go on and go on to the point where we would have movies such as Sin City or Blade Runner that try to recapture that look and feel of film noir. While...
Or even like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a great example.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, exactly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit would be a perfect example of wanting to recapture that seedy, dark, shady area, while also kind of adding another layer to it by combining it with another genre, be it like toon noir or like
Right.
Watchmen's superhero noir or Blade Runner's sci-fi noir or
Right.
the anime the Big O with mech noir. There's always they take these tropes and see what they can do with them by adding more stuff on top of it, and Maltese Falcon is the representation of film noir in its purest form.
Yes.
Yeah, and it kind of represents everything that I love about the genre. And if there's anything I want to say that it doesn't have, would probably be it has the look and feel, certainly, but I think other movies would come later on to take advantage of the visual. I think the visual element is the one thing that it kind of misses that later noir movies would come to add on top of it. There are certain scenes that are darkly lit. There is a scene, I believe, where Sam's apartment was casted in shadow, and it was around the window where the police would be looking at, or the window where they're looking at to see Wilma watching them. That would be surrounded in shadow, or you would have the shadowed area where you would see what do you call the front door to Sam's apartment. That would be completely darkened in shadow to add this layer of mystery as to who can it be behind that door whenever someone comes a knocking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can definitely see that, and like you said, because it's kind of the first in the genre, I think that they would see that when there was those aspects were used in this film, it worked really well, so that people would use it more often later on. And
right. And there's not a whole lot of action as well.
Yes,
a lot of it's very dialogue based. There aren't any shootouts. There's no there's no car chases. Nothing really serious like that. It's all about motivations and betrayals and relationships and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, that was one thing I was going to say that we see in a lot of future noir type films is a shootout of some kind, or maybe a fist fight or something like that, where this is much more of a mental chess game. I do not think, if for anybody who hasn't seen this film yet, and hopefully we've done enough to pique your interest, that you'll be disappointed by that fact, because it is so well done with the characters playing each other. But it's not an action film. Okay, let's just say that off the bat, which is kind of, I think, associated with noir, where people would think about shootouts, maybe for something like, the Untouchables or something like that. You're not going to get that here. But it's still a fantastic film despite that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you really need action when you've got Humphrey Bogart, Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre, and Mary Astor all in these wonderfully portrayed roles.
No, in fact, I think in this instance, the film is well done to the point where if Sam had to resort to violence or fisticuffs, I feel like it would have taken away from his character.
Yeah, he was a person who always used his head, never his fists.
Yes, yeah.
In fact, I don't think he ever pulled a gun on anyone, really. He would pull other people's guns and use it on them, but he would never, outright, threaten someone unless he was being threatened himself. Well, he would threaten people with his words, but never threaten their lives.
Right.
So that's a nice little subtle way of getting him on our side.
Yes. In fact, the only person he physically intimidates is Peter Lorre, but that's almost kind of like a little bit of a tiny bit of slapstick humor kind of mixed in there, I feel like, just to break the tension sometimes.
Right. Let's see. Anything else before we go? I think we just gave our final thoughts as well, but is there anything else you want to say? Because other than final ratings, I'm not sure. I think ratings would be kind of pointless when we're talking about something as iconic as the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
So it's it's an automatic 5 out of 5 from the start.
It is a 5 out of 5. The only thing I would say, if you haven't seen this film and you're a fan of KaijuNoir's YouTube channel, I would highly recommend going to check it out. It's not the kaiju films that we all know and love for the most part, but I do not think you'll be disappointed, and you'll be opening yourself up to a new world of very cool and very enjoyable films going forward.
Absolutely. And I do want to say thank you very much, Matt, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my second favorite genre of all time. And it was really great being able to talk to someone who is as well versed, if not well versed in the genre as I am.
Oh yeah, in fact, let me mention, we touched on it briefly, but I don't get paid for these stories, so I forget to plug them. But I do a lot of work for Black Coat Press, which is located in France, and it's one of the reasons I fell in love with
the birthplace of the noir name.
Yes, yeah, and in fact, Black Coat Press does a lot of public domain stories. So a lot of the noir detectives that were very famous in France, like Harry Dixon, for instance, will do a lot of those type of stories. It's kind of what got me to fall in love with the series. In fact, I have a story coming out in the newest volume of Tales of the Shadowman. I think it's 13. That'll involve a great noir detective in Teddy Verano. So please check out Black Coat Press. Check out Tales of the Shadowman. Myself and many other writers who love noir-style stories published in that anthology. Those are short anthologies, but it is doing that helped me to fall in love with the genre. And fans of, we mentioned this kind of off air, but fans of like Batman will find themselves attracted to the genre as well.
Right.
You've heard us briefly kind of mention, Bridget O'Shaughnessy being a femme fatale, and Catwoman is a femme fatale that most people would know. But you could certainly see a lot of Sam Spade's character in Batman going forward, where he kind of walks that line and then they give and take between the two of them. By the way, we talked about Spider-Man Noir, a great graphic novel. It's Detective 27. Have you ever read that? That takes place in the Noir universe?
Unfortunately, I've never heard of Detective 27.
Well worth looking out. It's a story about in that Bruce Wayne doesn't necessarily become Batman. He becomes a...
you mean... Oh, okay. When I say, the funny thing is, I just Googled Detective 27, and I'm looking at Detective Comics number 27.
Right, it's kind of like a play on that too. And
yeah, for those who don't know, Detective Comics number 27 is the first appearance of Batman.
In Detective 27, so slight spoiler coming up, Bruce Wayne is drawn into this conglomeration of noir detectives who they don't overtly mention because of copyright reasons, but he's introduced to a character named Sam who's clearly Sam Spade, or he's introduced to the Thin Man and his wife, and other noir style characters, including one of our favorite characters who we need to do something eventually in the Shadow is
we got
in the Shadow for there. So we put that like kind of on the back burner for us for later. But that would be another good bridge for I think fans of like sci-fi fantasy into noir. It's a Detective 27, and like it's a nice play because, as you said, Batman first appeared in Detective Comics 27.
And is this an official DC book?
Yeah, it's a DC book. It's not like a fan fiction. I'm sure we can find a link and put it up in your description.
All right, because it's kind of difficult to look it up images of Detective 27 because all I find is the original Batman comic.
Right. But I know they do.
Okay, I think it's called Batman Detective number 27.
Okay, is that what it is? Okay.
I think that's the title.
It should just have like a big 27 on the cover.
Yeah, and the bat symbol over it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's called Batman Detective number 27.
Which would make sense with why I said like he's the 27th detective in this conglomeration of noir detectives.
Man, it must have been so much fun being a private detective or a private investigator back in the day.
You would think. I mean, it's just booze and hot chicks all the time.
Yeah. It reminds me of this, like, at the last film festival I ever attended at college, one person made a film noir comedy, and it started off with a person who decided to quit college to become a private detective, only to realize that private detectives wasn't a viable option in the modern era.
Yeah. Private detectives today is kind of just seeing men cheat on their wives type of thing.
Pretty much. Like if you've seen Jessica Jones, you've seen what that entails.
Yes, that's
another thing we can cover later on, because that's pretty much detective noir-ish.
Yes.
Actually, like, the majority of, like, the Marvel, even, like, within the Marvel Netflix series, has a very noir crime drama sort of feel amongst all of them, with the exception of, say, maybe Iron Fist and Luke Cage has some of it, but Luke Cage has more roots in like the older like blaxploitation series.
Yeah, but Daredevil's very noir. Jessica Jones is very noir. You and I recently discovered a comic, The Fist from
The
Blackstone
Fist,
Comics.
yes, yeah. Oh, what you say? What was it? Black what?
Blackstone Comics.
Blackstone Comics, yes. Definitely, for those of you who don't know, if you guys enjoy Daredevil, please check out The Fist by Blackstone Comics. Blackstone, I believe it's one word, right?
Yes, one word.
Yes, it's a new publication in Philadelphia, where you live, I believe.
Yeah, right
And,
outside.
Right outside. Yeah, you can, West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground was where Matt spent most of his days.
That's actually pretty close to true.
And so yeah, this was a comic that Matt introduced me to, and it's a lot of fun just reading that first issue alone. Maybe I'll review it in the future if I can get an official review copy from the creator himself. So let's see, any other things to pimp out? Well, let's see. I hopefully will have more chances to pimp out stuff if this audience enjoys this review. We'll definitely do more noir reviews in the future. And until then, I have been Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir, and you have been
Matthew Dennion, and while we're pimping, please follow me on Facebook at with Matthew Dennion, and check me out at MatthewDennion.com. You'll be able to find links to all of my kaiju novels and all of the noir work I do for Black Coat Press.
Thank you very much. And until next time, everybody, take care.